Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Most Merciful. Welcome back to the second episode where we are determined to share with you the references that we are using in this series of tafsir, inshallah. I'll get right into it. The first tafsir that I would like to introduce today from the Shi'i school of thought, attributed to the Ahl al-Bayt, is Tafsir al-Qummi, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh, Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi. Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi, who died in the year 329, was a scholar, a jurist, a mufassir of the Holy Quran, a muhaddith, a person that had more than 7,000 hadiths in the book of Al-Kafi by Shaykh al-Kulayni rahimahullah. And he himself narrates 7,860 hadiths from his father Ibrahim ibn Hashim al-Qummi. Of course, Qum is a city of scholarship, and the migration of scholarship, the migration of scholars began all the way in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when the Ash'ara, the clan of Zakaria ibn Adam al-Ash'ari al-Qummi, who moved, they were from Yemen, they came, they became the companion of Rasulullah, and after Amir al-Mu'mineen, they migrated towards the holy city of Qum and established the seminary here. This book, brothers and sisters, Tafsir al-Qummi, is, when we say Shia tafsir, this is what it comes to mind. A tafsir that mostly uses the traditions of the Ahl al-Bayt. It mostly uses the hadiths and the riwayat of Ahl al-Bayt. Traditions that have been given to us by the a'imma of Ahl al-Bayt that takes us to Rasulullah. The inner meanings of the Holy Quran. How the Quran, one ayah could have multiple tafsirs. Truly a treasure. However, once again, some people might just go and open Tafsir al-Qummi and they start reading a hadith and they say, wow, this doesn't sound like, a hadith from Imam al-Sadiq or Imam al-Baqir. First of all, we're not the ones to determine, there has to be a very rigorous scholarly approach to such things. What I'm trying to say is not every hadith in Tafsir al-Qummi we believe is sahih. We don't have that. We believe that the Holy Quran is the only book that is sahih, and the tafasir of the Holy Quran done by scholars, they try. However, if we know in the school of Ahl al-Bayt that Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Baqir, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Rasulullah said this is what the ayah means, that's what it means. The problem is figuring out whether they actually said it or not. The hadith that I'm reading in this book was actually said by the Prophet and his family or not. Or the trustworthy of the companions. Brothers and sisters, in my opinion, this is the greatest work of tafsir in the school of the Sahaba. And I'm not the only one with that opinion. I believe that this is the popular opinion amongst all the Muslims. Yes, this work, in our opinion, the Shi'i opinion, compared to the traditions of the Ahl al-Bayt, we cannot even compare it. This is the work of a person who was in school, who had teachers, who worked hard, who had the ability to do the tafsir of the Holy Quran, and tried his best. That knowledge is from Rasulullah to Imam Ali, as he says, I am the city of knowledge and you are the gate, and whoever wants to enter the city of knowledge has to go through the gate. Then that knowledge is passed to Hassan and Hussein and Ali ibn al-Hussein, Muhammad ibn Ali and Ja'far ibn Muhammad, and so on and so forth. And the people that surrounded Ja'far al-Sadiq surrounded a person who had direct access to Rasulullah in that sense. However, at the Sunni school of thought, the Sahaba school of thought, this is a highly respected work. Al-Fakhr al-Razi, Tafsir al-Kabir. Fakhruddin al-Razi, who died 824 years ago in the year 604 after Hijrah. He is Shafi'i al-Madhab, jurisprudentially. He is Ash'ari in the way that he believes in his theology. He is called Sultan al-Mutakallimin. He was born in Khurasan. He lived in Herat. So he hails from that part of the Persian dynasty or empire. And this man, though we find that in the school of Ahl al-Bayt, there are many times where there are references. When was this born? Sababun nuzul. What was the reason? However, this man, let's give him the credit that he made this a whole methodology. Meaning every time there is sababun nuzul, he talked about it. Every time there was, a surah that was in Mecca, he would say this is in Mecca. He would then say this is in Medina. And he talked about what is the difference between the Mecca surah and the Medina surah. He came and he made a list. Many Shia tafasir, scholars of tafsir, though they take their hadiths from the Ahl al-Bayt, have been influenced by this man's work. This man uses, as what they call his colleagues, the scholars that came after him, he uses the Quran to understand the Quran, but he also sometimes does tafsir al-Quran bil-ijtihad, with his own personal opinion. And inshallah you will see sometimes he will come across hadiths of the Ahl al-Bayt, of the merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He will mention them, and at times they will be found in this book, Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He brings the same hadith, but he eliminates certain words. They say, would walk with 300 students. I want to be fair, brothers and sisters. I want to give the respect to the scholars where it's due. I also challenge one of our colleagues in the Sunni school of thought, our brothers, those who are doing the tafsir of the Holy Quran. Why don't you bring the Shia books? Aren't they the tafsir of the Quran of the Shia? Aren't they referencing the Ahl al-Bayt? How do you say we love the Ahl al-Bayt, we follow the Ahl al-Bayt? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, didn't he say, إِنِّي مُخَلِّفٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَتِي? Isn't it in this book, Sahih Muslim? Didn't Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, مَثَلُ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي فِيكُمْ كَسَفِينَةِ نُوحٍ? The example of my progeny amongst you is like the ark of Noah. مَنْ تَخَلَّفَ عَنْهَا هَلَكَ وَغَرَقَ. Whoever does not seek refuge to the ark of Noah will perish, he will drown. Here we want to do things otherwise. We want to make sure that our brothers and sisters who are listening to the tafsir also understand that their books are also kept in mind. That if there is something that's, for example, Al-Fakhr al-Razi has said that other Shia scholars have not said, it will most certainly be mentioned. If there is a unique point that he was able to understand and determine and others were not able to, or others adapted his opinion after, whether it's Sunni school of thought or Shia school of thought, we are meant to say he is the founder of that. He also was the one that spoke of how every beginning of the surah is unique and it's connected to the end of each surah, and the end of each surah is connected to the beginning of the next surah. He also gives a lot of importance to sabab al-nuzul, why a chapter was descended. He also talks about fiqh. When he comes about an ayah that talks about Allah, he talks about the fiqh. He talks about which school he believes is closer to the ayah in its jurisprudence. When he comes to a theological debate, he uses the Quran to say, and those individuals are closer in their theology to the Holy Quran. And he also stays away from al-Isra'iliyat, the hadiths, or, I have seen Isra'iliyat here. However, he stays away from Isra'iliyat more than others. I spend a lot of time on this tafsir because it's a very important tafsir. Then comes the equivalent of Tafsir al-Fakhr al-Razi in the Shi'i school of thought, Tafsir al-Mizan by Al-Allama Muhammad Hussein Tabatabai. This book, brothers and sisters, is of course, Allama Tabatabai died in the year 1981, and this book is very unique. Why? Because it is the first tafsir that is jami'. It uses all the methodologies. He uses, for example, reason and philosophy, which some of our scholars do not, appreciate, but that's fine. We discuss things and we may disagree with them, or other scholars may disagree with them. This does not discredit the work of the scholar. He also brings hadiths. He also, discusses Al-Fakhr al-Razi. He also discusses other scholars. Sometimes he agrees with them. Sometimes he disagrees with them. He also has a bit of a contemporary approach in a sense that he talks about, things that are taking place today. Allama Tabatabai was truly a philosopher, a mufassir of the Holy Quran. He was also a person that understood the riwayat. He was an usuli. He was the teacher of Mutahhari, Sheikh Mutahhari, Shaheed Mutahhari, and Shaheed Beheshti. And he was also the student of An-Naini. He was also the student of Isfahani. He was the student of Sayyid Ali al-Qadi, which gives him a dimension of Arfan and the esoteric, spiritual route that they have in certain ways. And of course, you've probably heard his story with Henry Corbone, the exchanges that they had about Shia Islam, which is extremely unique in its kind. This is Tafsir al-Mizan by Allama Tabatabai. Then we come to Tafsir Jami' al-Bayan, or Tafsir al-Tabari. Tafsir al-Tabari, brothers and sisters, is an extremely important tafsir. Tabari died in the year 310, Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Tabari, of course, he comes from Tabaristan, again, a man who hails from Persia, a respected tafsir. However, in this tafsir, you will find hadiths that, it is very quickly determined that those hadiths are from the Israeliyat. The way some of the, verses are explained through hadiths that have been placed in our books are imports from, the traditions that came before Islam, the traditions that had been changed, the traditions that accuse the prophets. By that I mean the Judeo-Christian traditions. Some prophets, God forbid, committed adultery, and some people fought God, and some people, a hadith says that Musa punched the angel of death in the eyes and gave him a black eye and things like that. I'm not trying to discredit this hadith, this book. This book also has a lot of use, a lot of benefit. It is respected by a lot of the brothers and sisters. However, it is a scholarly opinion amongst the Sunni school of thought that كثرت فيه الإسرائيليات. His name is Abu Ja'far ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Some people who are not very familiar with the structure of the hadith, when they see Abu Ja'far, they think that is Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, who is also Abu Ja'far. Imam al-Baqir, that's the father of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. So sometimes when they say Qala Abu Ja'far, some people read this and think that it is, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. This is when, we have to be careful. This is Tafsir Nur al-Thaqalain by al-Huwayzi, who died 334 years ago in the year 1112 after Hijrah. This, brothers and sisters, is a compilation of hadiths. You will not find the author's opinion here. He brings the ayah, and then he brings hadiths from Kafi, Shaykh al-Kulayni. He brings hadiths from Tafsir al-Qummi. He brings hadiths from Man La Yahdaruhu al-Faqih, and he brings hadith from Thawab al-A'mal. This is, how I said when we talk about Shi'i tafsir, we think of Tafsir al-Qummi. This is the latest. It's 300 and almost 50 years old. However, it is something that used all the major books of hadiths and he just put them together. Again, those hadiths need to be looked into. We need to look at their chain of narrators. However, it's a really good encyclopedia for those who want a hadith, tafsir bil-ma'thur bil-riwayat. Tafsir ibn Kathir, again, one of the very key tafasir in the Sunni school of thought. He died in the year 774. And here he talks, it's not, a tafsir that uses every single methodology. It uses a few methodologies. However, in this book of tafsir, Ibn Kathir uses ahadith, mostly. Ahadith, and he uses the ahadith that I believe he may have tried his best to determine that those hadiths are, valid. However, we have to cross-check those ahadith. When we look at tafsir, we look at a hadith in the Sunni school of thought, and then we look at the Shi'i school of thought and see whether they are, in agreement with one another. If they're not, maybe we have to look at books of history, see what history has to say. We have to then go back to the ayah and see what we can determine through the ayah as well. Brothers and sisters, this brings us to the end of introducing our main resources, our main references. However, in this process, we have kept in mind 16 books of tafsir. 16 books of tafsir. For example, Tafsir al-Namuna or al-Amthal by Shaykh Makarim Shirazi. Tafsir al-Sha'rawi, for example. Those are books that I use in order to seek aid and help in the process, in the flow of the tafsir of the Holy Quran. Sometimes we will be using, for example, books that have been written, 1-volume books or 2-volume books about a specific surah by certain scholars. And once we get to them, we will inshallah introduce them. I just wanted our Shia brothers, our Sunni brothers to understand that I will try to do my best not to be biased in this process. To try to give you a very fair understanding of the Holy Quran by both Sunni scholars and Shia scholars. I believe and I pray that inshallah this is going to be the first time where the Holy Quran in its entirety is being explained in the English language using both Sunni tafsirs, Shia tafsirs, tafsirs that use the hadith methodology, tafsirs that use, Al-Quran bil-Quran, using the Quran to explain the Quran, the other methodologies for the first time. And I'll try to be inclusive as much as I can and also try to relate the Holy Quran to our day-to-day lives. Until next episode, I leave you under the protection of the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.